wonderful panel discussion on the topic automation in healthcare, making hospital future ready. Automation in a hospital is a buzzword today, as this is like a quality in a hospital. You can never say that the automation is done and that's it. It is a journey, and believe me, it is a long journey. Many times I have heard from my CEO that healthcare is complex. He says that unless you have an attitude, passion, influencing ability, innovative mindset, agility, you can pick up a lot more motivation jargons from the dictionary. Unless in other ways you have that, it is very difficult to work or sustain in this industry. And when you need to imbibe the automation into healthcare, it becomes highly complex. Most of the CIOs in the healthcare here will definitely vouch for the complexity faced on a day-to-day basis. Few of the CIOs from other verticals, my friends, have mentioned that they are running a mission critical application in their industry. For example, the industries like continuous process industries, banking, and so on and so forth, they think that if something goes wrong, okay, everything goes wrong there. But unfortunately or fortunately, we are in the healthcare CIOs are running the life critical applications. The data shared across the hospital has a huge impact on the patient care. In fact, we are between the life and death of somebody. Taken for an example, in a manufacturing industry, there will be an assembly lane where all the components are fixed, probably prefixed to get a proper outcome. But in the healthcare, every patient is different and every disease is different. Every disease behaves differently with different patients. I don't know how many times I've told different. So that is the fact of the life we live with. The school of thoughts and the mentors of my early days have said to me, when you do an automation, first you should have a defined process, proper flow charting, your data flow diagram, and so on and so forth. But with this crucial differences in place in the healthcare, automation has become highly complex and cumbersome. But we have stalwarts with us as panel members here who have accomplished huge success in automation by breaking all the barriers, differences, and difficulties. These implementations have paved way to elevate the healthcare industry to the next level. The days have gone where every hospital of our country was looking for a hospital information system, the so-called hospital information system, where the basic registration, billing, inventory, and finance was looked upon to be the automation in the healthcare. Definitely the days have gone. As a part of automation, today, the hospitals are keen in implementing the electronic medical records, integration and interfacing of medical equipments, remote monitoring using wearables, robotic process automation and automatic tracking of patients, assets and employees and whatnot. The COVID has facilitated the telemedicine in a big way now. Apart from this, the hospitals have started using the artificial intelligence and machine learning in many of the clinical and non-clinical avenues. With this preamble, I would introduce the panel members of the event before I go into the topic. We have Mr. J.P. Dwivedi, Chief Information Officer from Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Center, New Delhi. He's a senior IT leader with over 33 years of experience in the industry. Currently, he is the CIO of Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research Center since 2011. After his post-graduation in computer science, initially he worked for a public sector for 8 years. He held several positions for 15 years in payroll systems before joining Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Center in New Delhi. He has been decorated with lots of feathers on his cap, like Healthcare Innovation Hero, Healthcare Transformation Leader, CIO Power List and CIO Crown, Information Visionary, Best CIO of the Year 2019, and World CIO 200. You're welcome, Mr. J.P. Dwivedi. Next, we have Ms. Willow Williams, Chief Information Officer and Head Digital Transformation, From Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital and Research Center, Mumbai, Bilu has over 30 years of experience with inclination in leading innovation and digital transformation to enhance patient experience. She has multifaceted experience in varied sectors like healthcare, retail, and manufacturing. Her current focus is towards information management and security, identifying new healthcare technologies, software applications, design and development, budget planning and operational cost control within the IT framework, and setting up IT policies are the roles what she is doing now. She believes in creating business value through IT to ensure the customer or the patient satisfaction. Welcome, Ms. Yulu Williams.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Praveen Bist, Chief Information of Amrita Hospital, Cochin and Delhi NCR. He has been associated with Amrita since 2004 and had multiple roles in varying capacities. Prior to that, he was with I2 Technologies in Dallas, USA. In his tenure, he has worked with prestigious institutions like Baba Atomic Research Center, Maharashtra Medical Education and Drugs, and prestigious hospitals including BHU Hospital Varanasi, DMCH Ludhiana, PCMC, and NMMC municipal hospitals. He has earned BTech Mechanical Engineering from IIT Delhi, and he is a topper in MS Industrial Engineering from Ohio State University. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Praveen Bist. We have Ms. Mithali Biswas with us, the Chief Information Officer of CK Birla Hospital, Haryana. Mithali comes with over 22 years of IT experience spanning across multiple roles, technologies, and industries. She currently heads the technology and digital transformation of CK Birla Hospital as a CIO, which comprises of 3 landmark identities: the Calcutta Medical Research Institute, BM Birla Heart Research Center, and Rukmani Birla Hospital. Prior to joining to CK Birla Hospital, she had a career spanning across 20 years with IBM and PwC Consulting. In her last role, IBM, she worked as an Associate Director, Cloud Application Services, and she was responsible for delivering complex digital transformation to clients across the globe. She is a strong leader with keen eye for talent recognition and grooming. Warm welcome, Ms. Mithali Biswas. We have Mr. Shashank Saini, Business Head for Digital Health at Ujala Cygnus Healthcare. Shashank, a technology specialist with a cross-industry experience over a decade, currently working with Ujala Cygnus as Business Head in Digital Health. He brings with him a deep and cutting-edge technology, engineering and analytics across IT, print and electronic media, including digital marketing services. He has a wide interest in healthcare and has scaled many healthcare startups. He is also an active member of Project Step One, a pan-India health initiative for many doctors and technologies. Welcome you, Mr. Shashank Saini.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. May I just get into the subject before I don't talk anything about subject, because we have a lot of people who's lined up here. Now I request Mr. JP Divadi, the CIO of Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Center, will kindly let us know what are the challenges. I mean, there are different topics which I mentioned regarding EMR and so on and so forth. And he will talk about the electronic medical records, what are the challenges, what you have faced during the implementation, and how did you overcome that. Over to you, Mr. Divedi.
Thank you, Biju. Thank you, the forum, for inviting me, giving an opportunity to be in front of you. So there are several challenges, but one challenge, mother of all, clinical adoption. We all know it. And there are regions. I was also trying to push vanilla EMR through their throats and was vehemently registered. But then after some experience, I understood that the problems of clinicians were very genuine and we should be very sensitive of them. So I found basically 4 major problems with generally prevailing EMRs. First problem is, clinical productivity. Doctors are anyway seeing a lot of patients, particularly in our country, OPDs are very busy. And then expecting them to enter all the details one by one with number of clicks, it is really nightmare for them. Second big problem is patient safety. They are genuinely concerned. Your system is faulty, there are bugs, there could be problems. We are not dealing with material here. We are dealing with patients' real lives. So they were hesitant on using EMR. Third is, data retrieval. So I'm putting in and in and in all data that you are asking, but I don't get the reports that I want for my research, for publications, for studies, and even for the treatment. And fourth, and most important is continuity of care. I start relying on the online system, and suddenly your online system is down. Now I'm in the middle of the treatment. What happens to my patient? I don't have the contact. So these are very genuine problems. Problem needs a very specific detail. Vanilla EMR will not do. We need a very content-rich and context-sensitive system to really make it useful for our doctors. They should not have to select the injection or tablet or syrup, then go for a medicine name, then go for the dose, then go for the frequency. After 4 or 5 clicks, they will, take their head up. So you need to devise a system that understands a doctor's practice, have oncology management system, nephrology management system, cardiology management system, so it suits them and it has all the context sensitive information already fed in. Then when you come to oncology, not only oncology, you go to medical oncology information system, surgical oncology information system, because all their practices are different, their workflows are different. So it really needed those kind of specifics in the system to have to make it useful. Similarly, about patient safety, you make it robust enough so that whatever doctor has written, that instruction is followed verbatim through the service stations one after other. That is very important, so that whatever instructions are there are not lost in between and there are no translation errors. Actually, EMRs are supposed to increase patient safety manifold. That must be understood and explained properly. EMR should be rich enough to actually support the patient safety. Similarly, about continuity of care, you must have multiple layers of redundancies built in. It should not happen that your network switches fail and doctor is struggling to get the data. We must have proper BCP in place in the hospital to make it meaningful. Have those files, have printed records, or have DR sites readily available, have redundant network, medical grade network to make it really useful. So these have been some of my experiences that I learned hard way and started with one particular department, medical oncology. And I'm very happy to tell you that the adoption there is 95% plus, which actually makes us very proud. Then we took it to the surgeons and radiation oncologists in other areas. So we really learn it hard way. Somebody giving you a product and you just plug and play, it will not work. CIOs really have to, work very hard, burn midnight candles along with their teams, so that these systems are useful, catered, very specific to each doctor's practice, and very heavily configured to minimize every single click that you can with that doctor. Work with them to get it right. These are some of the experiences that I've had, and I'm happy to share with you all.
Thank you, Mr. Dwivedi. It was very nice, putting it very short and crisp, saying that the clinical adoption is the most important thing, which includes the patient safety, data retrieval, continuity of care, and so on and so forth. That's really good. We will just come back to you. So before that, I'll just go into Will Williams. There were a time that when only the people were smart, and now We have smartwatch, smartphones, and smart card and whatnot, right? A lot of being discussed about creating a smart hospitals. Ms. Billu, I request you to elaborate on what key functions make hospitals smart. Is it something about clinical devices, smart technology, or smart operations? Over to you.
Thank you, Biju. Good afternoon, everybody. So, actually, it's correct. People need to understand the definition of smart. So, for some people, it is connectivity. For some people, it is devices. Some people, it is a lot of integration. Basically, a smart hospital involves everything that can connect the patients, connect the doctors, connect the dots, connect the functions, everything. And the core of this connectivity is, of course, the networks. So to bring about, let me reduce it to start with a smart ICU in a smart hospital. Then we have smart ambulances. Then we have smart wards. We have smart buildings. We have got smart facilities. So let's take it one by one. Smart ICUs basically include a lot of direct connectivity with the patient, its clinical data, the patient's clinical data, directly reaching the doctor without having to enter too much of data manually, capture too much from the nurse, from the doctor, etc. So, as JP said sometime a little while ago, he spoke about EMR. Within EMR also, if I'm going to connect a smart ICU to give the EMR data, there are a lot of devices, the cardiac monitors, the ventilator, the syringe pumps, the defibrillators, and if all these devices can be connected in such a way that it saves a lot of time from the data that is collected automatically vis-a-vis the data that is collected manually. So imagine if a patient in the ICU who is critical and who needs a lot of focus from the doctor and the nurses, who needs to focus on the treatment, if they get ready-made data coming continuously in real time, connected to the EMR, then it saves a lot of time, effort, and quick decision-making for the medical and the clinical people around the patient. Therefore, the treatment parameters are also faster. The treatment turnaround time is faster. Similarly, if I talk about a smart ambulance, today we are seeing ambulances are quite a bit of a problem when it comes to saving a patient's life in the quickest and fastest possible way. If we were to be able to, today doctors in the ER and doctors in the ambulance talk via phones. They call up, they discuss what is the situation of the patient. Imagine if everything that the patient is hooked up to in a cardiac ambulance is directly relayed to the doctor, to the consultant in the EMS in real time, and the senior consultants, without traveling with the patient, can save a patient's life in that golden hour, and can immediately advise the treatment to the patient to bring the patient alive and safe back to the hospital. That is a great achievement than just taking a risk and bringing a patient with manual treatment and manual discussions in the ambulance. Then if you see a ward, if there are patients who are whose vitals are collected manually, maybe SpO2, temperature, pressure, whatever. And if instead of that, if I have wearables, or if I have digital devices which can simply connect to the patient remotely as in either contact or contactless. But if this device can pick up the patient's data, the vital parameters, and relay it back to the computer, to the EMR, fill up the EMR with all the data where the patient's doctor simply has to come and see the data and take decisions, then this ensures that there is a lot of time saved, there is a lot of fast treatment can be given, and effective treatment can be given. So when we talk, of course, this leads to further predictive and intelligence, business intelligence, and all clinical intelligence. But the core of all this is the data collection from these smart devices, which can be collected from any and every trigger point, whether it is the ICU, whether it is the ambulance, whether it is a ward. So I think this is a major step towards creating a smart hospital for a patient.
Thank you, Vilu. You have given a very good idea on what is a smart hospital. Being a smart is like connecting everything together, being it is an ICU or it is a ambulance or what. Okay, getting everything together, it automatically connects. So the work of the nurses are going down. They don't want to note down everywhere, and it automatically connects. There is no mistakes made by the nurses. There is no transcription errors, transcribing errors, and so on and so forth. So
Yes.
that it comes to them on a real time, so that it is much valued, right? Thank you very much to put across how a smart hospital will work, and we have to definitely work for that. Meanwhile, to attain the EMR platform and or to become a smart hospital, the basics are very important for us. I request Mr. Praveen Best from Amrita Hospital to kindly throw some lights on the standardization of medical records and how the interoperability is ensured. Over to you, Mr. Praveen.
Sure. Thank you again, Mr. Biju, for giving this introduction and giving us these topics that can help some of the viewers here to kind of visualize what challenges other hospitals have been through and kind of learn in the same process. So when it comes to standardization, one of the most important aspect is to adopt certain value sets. For example, talk about disease coding, right? So there are ICD-10 codes which are available, International Code for Diagnosis. And unless and until we adopt a common standard across the different spectrum of the healthcare, it is very, very difficult to talk about EMR. When you talk about interoperability, one EMR should be able to at least exchange some of the aspects of the data with other EMRs and be able to consolidate. That will result into what we call longitudinal EMR, or also the health record, lifelong health record, right? Sometimes known as LHR. So these are some of the challenges, and I'm actually very happy that including our government of India has put this NDHM, National Digital Health Mission, which has put up a blueprint so that different hospitals can adopt some of these initiatives, which will enable for patient to have a good record with them. The patient will himself be able to present the EMR and also be able to exchange with each other. So that is one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of standardization is the actual care itself. For example, if two different patients comes with, say, same problem, same issues, how do you ensure that the different departments have certain parameters that will ensure a similar outcome for the patient? So for that aspect, order sets are very, very critical. Like in an EMR, if it supports order set where you could have nursing orders, you could have investigations, you can have medication orders, including some of the other, say, care parameters that has to be tracked for the patient. If you can have that available, then different doctors will find it very, very easy to adopt to this kind of a system. Plus, it will ensure standardization across the different patient that you're trying to care. And there are different, events to it. And earlier in the talk, Mr. Dwivedi mentioned about the mother of challenges, which is the adoption. And I would like to share one small incident, more like a joke. What had happened was I was working for one of the healthcare institutions in the US, and we were struggling to move from ICD-9 to ICD-10 there. And and there was a lot of discussion, debates, and so somebody was mentioning, in India we are already using ICD-10 for few years already. But the fact of the matter was, in India, since we never actually used ICD, it didn't really matter whether we are in ICD-9 or 10. But in the US, where they have adopted ICD-9 in full way, for them to move to ICD-10 was a big challenge. So, sometimes it's very easy to say about different standards, but unless you adopt it, that is when you will find value, and then that is where you would, derive the benefit out of it. So with that, I'll let other panel speakers speak, and we can dwell more into it in the next round.
Thank you very much, Mr. Praveen. It was indeed nice to hear from you stating that standardization is very important, and if you want a longitudinal EHR, that is electronic health record, starting from day one till your death, you need the standardization so that everybody will understand on the same way. Also, it can be compared with the outcomes, and your orders be common, and so on and so forth. And this makes completely interoperable between the applications what we are running on the healthcare. Thank you very much for giving that highlights. And today the devices are getting smart. Honestly, we are losing the intelligence, and artificial intelligence is slowly started to take over. And better than us, the machine started learning first, which we call it as machine learning. I request Mithali Biswas to highlight her points on how the artificial intelligence and machine learning can be used in the hospital. Mithali, over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Viju, and good afternoon, everybody. So I was just reading a report, a couple of years back. Deloitte actually conducted a survey to figure out, what are the top 10 technologies which would change the face of healthcare in the next coming 10 years. And interestingly, actually, AI and ML, it topped the list with 83%. So that's the power of AI and ML. And the base or the foundation of all of it is data. So, going back to what Ms. Vilu said, what Mr. Dwivedi said, it's all about data, whether it's smart devices, it's collecting the data, EHR, EMR, we are collecting the data. Now we've collected a lot of data and what to do with it. And that's where the power of AI and ML comes in. Now, traditionally, our healthcare has been more on the reactive side. Which is, we go to the hospital only when we fell ill. When we are sick, we go to the doctor, we consult the doctor, get the diagnosis. But with the power of AI and the data that we are capturing now, it's slowly shifting from reactive healthcare to a more predictive healthcare. So in manufacturing industry, I think it has been long back to predict the failures. But I think in healthcare also now, it's more about predicting. It's more about focused on the wellness of the patient or wellness of people rather than, reacting only when somebody is sick. So that's a big shift that AI and ML will bring in. When we talk about the doctors, the power that AI and ML will have is about the diagnosis. So nothing can actually replace the personal touch that will, stay on. However smart the machines become or however, artificial intelligence comes in, that touch is going to be there. It's not going to go away. But what will happen is, I think the speed with which the doctors can operate, as anyway, the doctor to patient ratio, especially in India, it's quite high. So the doctors are always struggling with time. So what the data can do is, the artificial intelligence can do is predict and also kind of, tell what diagnosis to apply. And then the doctor is more informed, has more tools in his hand to start the diagnosis or to start the treatment. So that's the power, it brings in. It also reduces the stay of the patient in a hospital. So overall, it also is improving your patient experience and the well-being. Now, this is not only limited to clinical side, I would say. This AI and ML is touching all the functions of the hospital, starting from your operations to supply chain, to sales and marketing, to HR, everything. So we recently kind of, we changed our HR application and now it comes with a chatbot. Very simple thing, but, the people can directly go and, ask about their leaves, ask about their salary, anything under the HR. And the best part of it is that it is not the end. The machine learning models, the better you train it, the better it becomes. So, we just started with phase 1 and, we got a feedback that we want to know this. And slowly we are training the models. So the better you train it, it's going to get better and better and better. And that's going to help, the HR departments to be more efficient. Focus on something which is more needed, rather than answering these type of questions, which could be well done with a virtual assistant. Then on the other sides, we are also launching something called as a patient engagement platform to, engage with the patients on a more personalized manner. So rather than just reaching out, to tell them that, we have so-and-so doctors, or you come for whatever, what we are doing is we are gathering data from different, the different data sets that we have, whether it's lab reports, your radiology reports, your whatever EMR you have. We are not 100% compliant on EMR still because of the adoption issues. But whatever data you have, then you churn out that data. And then, for example, if somebody is diabetic, had come for a surgery, you then, kind of combine all of those and send a very personalized communication to the patient, so that it's very specific. It is not a general communication which goes out. You personally engage with the patient. You can tell about the wellness packages that are there. He needs to kind of what all checks. It helps to control your chronic diseases also, the ones which needs proper kind of diagnosis or treatment in proper intervals of time. Also, when I talk about finance, sales, marketing, a lot of data that we are collecting, the business insights now that it is throwing back, with a lot of, algorithms and, that what are the exact issues to focus on, or, what is it that we are doing good in terms of supply chain, what are the drugs that I am using more, what are the compliances in terms about, compared to a formulary which I am not being compliant to, which otherwise is very difficult to find out. It's very difficult, but, with the power of data now, with the power of these algorithms, you can very easily kind of, the data is just in front of you. So you actually focus on doing something which you should be doing rather than churning out that data. So that's the power of data. The challenge, of course, is there, because one challenge I would say is, capturing all the data. We are still not there. Mr. Dwivedi already highlighted about EHR. That is one part of it. But I also, personally face challenges when it comes to nurses or the technicians in kind of, putting in everything into the system. People are still very comfortable on pen and paper. And I think we have a long, long way to go. And we'll not get the benefits unless we start capturing all the data. So I think the focus right now, at least for me, is to start capturing all the data that's there in the hospital, across functions, both clinical and non-clinical. And I hope in the coming years, I think we will see that shift as an industry from, being on a more reactive side to a more predictive side.
Thank you, Mithali. You have done wonderfully said. You have said wonderfully. The good news is the AI and ML top the list, and the basics is data. Unless and otherwise we have a proper data, okay, nothing can be done. And healthcare is slowly moving from reactive to predictive, that is from illness to wellness, and that's a good point. And for any medical, any data, like your clinical decision support system, patient experience, for all that data is important. And when you use your AI and ML, it makes things better. And one good thing is like you get a lot of insights. One side is the clinical insights, the other side is the business insights we get from the AI and ML. And good that you said that the chatbots has been used in the healthcare industry, and that is new for us. And it's good to know that these things are in place. So we will again come back to you. So meanwhile, we'll go to Mr. Shashank Saini. After the COVID, everyone are afraid to get into the hospital, and they are in the need of consultation, not on the doorstep, but inside the hospital, inside the house. I request Mr. Shashank from Ujala Cygnus Healthcare, and he will brief us on, okay, is telemedicine right for every healthcare business, and what services can telemedicine provide now and in the future? Over to you, Mr. Shashank.
Thank you, Mr. Biju, and thank you everyone who has spoken before me. I think it's pretty insightful to hear what are the IT gems, doing in their respective hospitals and units. Great events of learning, right? So when we talk about telemedicine, I think, sorry to say, to start with this notion that, thanks to the pandemic, the underdog of the healthcare is back in the field, which is telemedicine, right? I still remember 3 years, 4 years back, telemedicine doctors or the hospital health service provider used to laugh that this will kill the doctor's practice. But now, forced, reasons for last 1.5 years, telemedicine or the teleconsultation or the telehealth have become one of the talking points and the business points for each one of us who are in the field of healthcare, right? And finally it has got its own due respect, which has to be provided to the particular subject line. Even the government and the consumer, the healthcare players or the service providers were forced, to think about it and to develop as a technology for the hospitals or for the consumers. The government was forced to put up the more process and policies across it. The NDHM, as Mr. Bish talked about it, I think the government pretty much serious about how and firmly believes that telemedicine or the technology is the way where we can reach out to the last mile and the remotest part of our country. We see the numbers have been surprising, right? When we see there's been a 5x growth in the usage, there has been a 146 month-on-month increase in the access to digital healthcare, and the rate of the health tech startups coming up now, seeing the pandemic and getting future prepared and seeing the value, which can be, create an impact to the end consumer. It seems to be a pretty good sign for the players who are into this, and it has proven its matter. Where telemedicine was the only option. If we talk about the last lockdown or the current lockdown we had, and now preparing for the wave 3, it remains the only solution that people were hooked on. And the consumer have also changed. People have become more tech savvy, even more are aware of their health thanks to the internet and the variety of healthcare apps that we have. Each hospital is trying to or has already developed their own teleconsultation. Doctors have become more tech savvy, right? Thankfully, as Mr. Dwivedi and Mitali ji mentioned, that the adoption has been a challenge, but here the forced, the situation have bypassed that adoption for the doctors or the staff or the consumers even. Telemedicine is nothing new for us. When we talk about it, it's been with us for many years and back ages or decades. But the only challenge, as we said, this was more of a behavioral change for everyone who was attached to it. But I think it's now growing. People have adopted it. Surprisingly, when we talk about telemedicine in the rural side, we as an Ujala Signals group are remotely, in those tier 2 and tier 3 or tier 4 cities of our country, especially in North India, where we see a lot of healthcare has been broken, right? People, there's no decent primary care or tertiary care services available. Happy to see that early signs coming in where people are using their own handset devices, right? To connect to a doctor, the last mile or delivery of pharmacy or the home sample collection has picked up, right? For us, when we talk about the urban and the rural side, both behave pretty differently, right? And getting to the rural market, what consumer need is a pretty simple, seamless solutions to connect to a doctor. They don't need heavy apps, or fancy technology to get. I think one thing which I personally have realized that if you're able to bridge that gap with a normal voice call, people are happy to use the solution. And that's how the rural dynamics are changing for us. We as a group, we thought when we are in the rural part of our hospitals are there on the offline side, when we're thinking of building an online, the digital health that we talk about and which I represent too. By default it comes like, let's build up an app, right? We should have an Android and iOS and all that stuff. But when we started interacting, right, with our consumers, the patients, right, they were not pretty much comfortable downloading a new app, or there were issues in navigating on the app, booking an appointment, ordering medicine, or basic, getting their registration done. And that was literally put me back on a seat. This is not where we can penetrate to the tier 5 or tier 6 villages even. So they should have this simple, what we did was building up a simple IVRS solutions, which is again an AI, function and supported, where people are pretty much easily, get a simple solutions for their basic healthcare needs and get in touch with our doctors for a teleconsultation, which is by default on the, 3 modes available, which is your chat, audio, and video. WhatsApp has become a really important tool for our daily life, where we have seen a lot of stickiness or user engagement happening on WhatsApp. I think sooner it will become a very decent healthcare platform. I don't know if Facebook will come into healthcare sooner or later, but that channel can be a really good engagement, communication, right, and retention tool, where if used wisely, though it has its own limitations and processes around it. But to reach out to the last mile, I think it's a better tool as compared to the other technologies that we can talk about when we specifically talk about the rural sector of our country, right? Telemedicine have proved, right, in last 1.5 years before that, it's really beneficial for the consumers, for the hospitals also, right, keeping the cost low, right, moving from the volume-based to a value-based care. I think that's the thing that we have to think about, as Mithali mentioned, from illness to wellness, and same what we believe is from the volume to the value-based care. I think, and telemedicine plays the pretty important role into it. Patients, we have a number of use cases where how it saves time, saves money, 24/7 availability. How it saves doctors. Doctors, can grow their portfolio in terms of number of patients they want to see. Specialists, can have access to more of the patients. Multiple use cases in terms of the hospitals, how it's benefited, because it's also keep them over an edge for their competition hospitals nearby. So I think a lot of things are happening on telemedicine, and as Mithali just mentioned, that the future is AI and the ML, and I have firmly, pass on my vote to that. And at a group level, being here, we are deeply working on that technology and the future technology, how we can, at least use these technology, the future technology that we talk about, which will take some time. Again, the challenge will come up, as we said, for the EMR, Mr. Dwivedi mentioned, and Mithali mentioned for the EMR, hygiene in her hospital. I think that will come again when the AI ML things come, when the adoption is the biggest challenge. It's more of the behavioral change for the entire ecosystem. When we talk about for any infusing new technology, it's not so easy in India, right? We are pretty bad in acceptance of new things. But yes, going forward, and currently even telemedicine has been a pretty important tool, in saving a lot of lives. Our numbers in terms of revenues, in terms of users, have proved us and given a lot of good confidence, right, that this has to be there. Surprisingly, a lot of our doctors were reluctant to use or to do consultations over a video call or over a audio call even. But post the pandemic, I think everyone got taught. The numbers will definitely reduce now when the things are pretty normal, because it's pretty important. The manual touch will never go, and we Indians are pretty much habitual to it, right? We will get 100% cure in case of when we sit in the clinics. But yes, going forward, I think it's one of the biggest contribution to change the dynamics of the healthcare industry.
Thank you, Shashank. Shashank, I think you have given an insight of what telemedicine is as of today. But fortunate or unfortunate that COVID has forced us to make teleconsultations as of now. The important thing is the telemedicine is helping the rural people. Okay, the tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities have must start. Okay, telemedicine, and the people who cannot reach the doctor can reach to telemedicine. So that's a good part of it from you. And thank you very much for explaining that. Probably I can take 2 or 3 people onto this. And Viru, I will just ask you a small question on how do you quantify the efficiency improvements by making a smart hospital? Do you have any views on that?
So efficiency is the major benefit out of a smart hospital. If you can't achieve efficiency, then you are not smart. Let's summarize it that way. So if, say for example, we spoke so much about EMR adoption, all right, if we keep on forcing the nurses and the doctors to enter data from a clinical perspective, see, from an administrative perspective, a hospital always has enough people to enter billing data, enter admission data, enter whatever. But when it comes to clinical data adoption, which is the most required in a hospital for even the next levels of AI and deep learning on the clinical fronts. So if we keep forcing them, it's not going to be achieved. Let's try and join hands with them to see how much of that capturing we can take over and move it to an automatic system of transfer from devices. So as doctors say, if you keep wanting me to enter all the vitals, if you keep wanting me to enter orders in the system all the time, when am I going to actually treat the patient? So let's give him whatever he needs to treat the patient through a smart environment. And then he can get this data on his fingertips. He simply goes, looks at the data, and decides, okay, now the next step for the patient's treatment is so and so. This is the biggest benefit to create an efficient clinical environment within the hospital, be it wards, be it ICUs, be it ER, be it any area of the clinical environment, be it OTs. So if I talk about a smart OT, you want to know when was the patient, how much do you want to really charge a patient? You want to say that, okay, a surgery that should by default have a TAT of 1 hour has taken 2 hours. Now, how do you monitor this? Or a OT or a surgery which needs to take about 1 hour, or it's charged for 1 hour, actually gets over in half an hour generally. When you want to monitor these kind of things, you simply put in BLE devices, you put in tags, you make it a smart environment where you can actually capture the wheel in, wheel out of a patient in the OT, and you can automatically monitor this. Why wait to see? And this gives a lot of efficient inputs to the administration to see whether their costing is right, the patients are not overcharged, the patients are not undercharged, the people do not feel that this hospital is expensive when they come for surgeries, and so on. So the benefits are endless when you want to actually understand the efficient way of working for any area of the hospital with a smart environment built. So whether you take RFID, whether you take BLE, there are technologies abound. Whether you take connectivity with the devices, even when the patient goes home, for example, after a surgery or after a major illness, the patient has to be monitored. If the patient is willing to, use wearables, use certain devices which are not very expensive, and the market today is flooding with these kind of wearables, smart wearables as we call them, the only point of contention for a patient becomes the network. If he has a good network with a good bandwidth, not only is he capturing his own data for continuous monitoring, but he is also able to transfer that data directly to the hospital which he is associated with, and the doctor can monitor him remotely. Again, a piece of telemedicine in a way. And his data goes on building with the hospital, wherein whenever he needs to talk to a doctor on any critical issue facing him in that point of time, he simply has to pick up the phone and call the doctor. His data is available to the doctor in real time, and that's it. I mean, the doctor has to just go and tap his EMR, and the data is available to him to give the right treatment, to suggest the right advice.
Yeah.
So there are like thousands of ways to make it efficient and benefit the patient.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you have done it well, saying that you have tangible and intangible benefits and efficiencies across. In terms of tangible benefits, you get the revenue, not leaked, or it just goes across the hospital. And in terms of the tangible benefits, the doctors, the nurses, and others gets the benefits out of it when it is getting connected completely, right? Thank you very much for doing so. And just I'm moving to Mr. Praveen. Praveen, do you find any cost reduction or efficiency improvement by doing standardization or making interoperable? I understand that it is not tangible. You cannot, say that, okay, 1:1, but still, do you have any benefits out of it? Over to you.
Yeah, surely there are multiple benefits, and like we were earlier talking that for doctors, one of the main objective is from the patient safety perspective. So I'll give you a couple of examples. What benefit does it derive more from patient safety as well as from the cost perspective. For example, you could have, when you do CPOE, which is computerized physician order entry, at the time of entry of an order, system can cross-check if the same investigation was, say, ordered a few hours ago. A patient would have visited a different specialty, and then now he's visiting a new doctor. And if doctor is not doing CPOE, he's going to write on a piece of paper, he's going to bill twice for the same investigation, because then system is not able to do any check. But if there is a CPOE, we can alert the physician that such similar investigation was done some time ago, and then it's up to him. He could still go ahead and order it, or he could look at the results of it. So that will not only reduce the time to which you can help the patient. It will reduce the costing part of it, and obviously the safety part of it. Why to unnecessarily have the patient go through multiple investigations if it was already done? So that is just one example. Similarly, on the CPOE with respect to medication order, if we do, if the clinician physician is ordering a med order on the system could do so many things, so many checks. You talk about drug allergies, you talk about drug-to-drug interaction. Again, that requires that the previous doctor or the other docs are also doing the same on the system. Otherwise, if one physician only adopts, then it will not be able to do much checking. So if everybody together adopts the system, that is where the value is. And if we explain to the doctors, physician that way, and we tell them that it's not just about saving your time, saving the time of the hospital, but the patient safety side, that is a great benefit as well. And I have seen a lot of alerts, or a common mistake that happens if we do not have a CPOE is a duplicate therapy. Again, a physician orders a drug and somebody else has ordered a similar drug, and then patient, it is a different drug. So for patient will also never question it, and then you end up making the case worse instead of improving the patient situation. So there are so many different factors, and if you try to logically explain, definitely physicians are on your side, but then the technology also has to support. You have to make sure the number of clicks has to be minimized. One extra click and you can throw off the doctor, and he will never again get back to you. So you have to look at all the different aspects of it and then be able to convincingly go back to them. And I'm sure, finally, end of the day, they also want to do the best care possible for the patient, and together with the help of technology, with whatever convincing, and from the patient safety side, if we have that use case, yes, we will be able to adopt and ensure the EMR is there for the patient, including telemedicine, because that's one of the areas which was mentioned earlier. A lot of hospitals are adopting telemedicine, but I can count on my finger the number of hospitals where the telemedicine episode is actually part of EMR. It's just one-off episode, and which will never again be even looked at, which loses its value. Talking about volume to value. So that is perfect example of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen. You said that the patient safety is the most efficient thing what we can have it, and the same investigation in case if one doctor is ordering, probably if they are moving to another doctor on the same facility, they can order the same investigation. It can be definitely controlled on that, and system checks on clinical decision supports if it is being done by across the hospital, across all the doctors. So that's what we take from you. Thank you, Praveen. And I move to Ms. Mitali. How do you think that these implementations on AI and ML would be useful in the quality and business perspective? Do you have any examples?
Right. So again, operational efficiency is something, which this will help in. Going back to the example that Ms. Velu said, this EMR or EHR adoption. Of course, the doctors are not going to write if we ask them to. So we have to automate as much as possible. And, the machine learned, the algorithms can be trained. So if you look at a doctor, he wouldn't prescribe more than 20 or 30 of his drugs, in majority of the cases. And, so the apps can be, trained so that, it's only those, his favorite ones come in. So, based on the diagnosis he has captured, even the diagnosis, he keeps typing fever, and whatever he normally keeps, typing fever for the last 5 days, fever and cough, whatever, his 4 or 5 things come up. So, that's how, and the better you train it, again, it better it is. So that increases your operational efficiency, across the clinical areas. And of course, if the efficiency increases, your cost goes down. Another thing that we can think of with this is the, new business models. Earlier, we didn't have this data. Now you have these wearable smart devices. You can remote monitoring a patient. So you can think of different business models around wellness, preventive checkups, which was earlier just limited to the preventive health checkups that we normally have in the hospital, but it can be extended more, with remote monitoring be possible, especially when the patients are scared to come to the hospital. In the last 1.5 years, we've seen people are very scared to come to the hospital unless, they need to, unless it's an emergency. We don't see people coming to the hospital. And there, we can really come up with different wellness packages, preventive, ways of monitoring a patient, which leads to new business models, which of course is additional revenue for the hospital. And lastly, I would say, this whole shift to a value-based care, which Mr. Shashank and Mr. Praveen also touched upon. So I think slowly that's where we need to move in the coming years, from a more, quantity-based care to a more value-based care. And that's where I think the power of AI and ML with a lot of data is going to come in.
Thank you. Thank you for just giving an input on how to improve the operational efficiency, the new business model, and how it is shifting from one to another. Thank you very much for your time. We are running short of time, so I will take a quick question to Shashank Saini. I mean, do you think that the trend of the telemedicine consultation will be there in the post-COVID world also? Just a question, and do you have any answers for this?
Yeah, I'll keep it very short, right? And I think yes, it will be there. It will be pretty much an integrated service to be provided from the healthcare fraternity to the consumers, right? As I said, it's a value-based service, right, which can really fill in the gaps if someone wants to increase their, reach towards the consumers at the last mile. So telemedicine, there will be a lot of evolution in this particular service with a lot of technology using get into it. A lot of adoption has yet to be received from the consumers to intervene in the more the robust process and policies towards it. Telemedicine is not about COVID. It's just a push where people have shown their acceptance to that particular telehealth or telemedicine. Now, when people have adopted it, it will more get evolved and people will accept it for a longer duration.
Thank you, Shashank. What you said is right. To get the people in the rural, and if the usage should be more, I think the telemedicine will be good to go even after the COVID. Thank you very much. And before I conclude, I'll just sum up what we spoke about today. Mr. Dwivedi spoke about the clinical adoption, the patient safety, the data retrieval, and continuity care of part of it. And Willu Williams added on to that, saying that we have to be having a smart ICUs, smart ambulances, smart wards will definitely help bringing a better efficiency. And we had Mr. Praveen talking about standardization based on the ICD-10 and having a longitudinal EHR and so on and so forth, so that the outcomes will be better. And adding some points, the artificial intelligence and machine learning is leading the list in the world. And what is needed is a basic foundation of the data on that, and how the data is useful for making predictive analytics from a reactive mode and from illness to wellness. And Shashank has pointed out in terms of how the telemedicine is helping in the world right now in this particular pandemic. And thank you very much for all of you. There was a great insights from all of you, and I sincerely thank the Asia Pacific News Network for aligning the leaders of this particular place. And it was very good learning initiative which you have started, and it is going good. Thank you for every one of you for taking your time on coming here and for patient sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Biju Veliadhan, CIO G. Kuppuswamy Naidu Memorial Hospital, wonderfully playing the role of moderator. I also thank JP Dwivedi, Willu Williams, Praveen Bisht, Mithali Biswas, and Shashank Saini for joining us for this session on automation in healthcare, making hospitals future ready. And I'm sure deliberations made in this session was quite insightful and informative, and the audience who are present here for this session have gained some experience and some insights on automation in healthcare for sure. With this, before you all leave, a small token of appreciation from all of us to all of you. Let's start with Biju Veliadhan. Certificate of appreciation to him, CIO G. Kuppuswamy Naidu Memorial Hospital. We thank you for joining us today and wonderfully playing the role of moderator for this session. Next certificate to Willu Williams, CIO, Head Digital Transformation, Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital and Research Center. Thank you so much, Willu Williams, for joining us today. We also present the certificate to Mr. Praveen Bisht, CIO, Amrita Hospitals. Thank you so much for joining us. A certificate we presented to Mithali Biswas, CIO, CK Birla Hospital. And thank you for joining us today. And a certificate of appreciation to Shashank Saini, Head of Digital Health, Ujala Cygnus Healthcare.
Thank you, sir.
We thank you. We
Thank
thank
you
all of
very
you
much.
today,
Thank
and
you
we're
so
going to mail you the certificate as well. Do keep in touch with us, and also, if you have time, do watch our next session. That session will be on accelerating digital transformation and the impact on the pharma industry, which will start at 4 p.m. India time sharp. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.